Some acknowledgement is all we're looking for here. I know it's going to take a while.
Some just have to fly all by themselves.
I know. Exactly.
Here we are, another Sunday morning.
Yep.
Another great day to be in church.
Amen.
Glad to have Mike's wife, and I'm sure that he's glad that she's here today.
Amen.
See what a good job he does for us and how much people appreciate it. I'm sure you see him putting forth the effort at home to get where he gets here. You probably know better than anybody what he goes through to prepare, but we always feel blessed we have Sunday school in here. And I'm still glad that he chose to come and help you down here, because he's been a great help to me. I just look forward to every Sunday to see what he's got next for us. Like he said, you know, and I think one of the best things I ever heard you say is that you just get the lesson a little bit before us. You know, that's how I feel about it too, but I've never thought of it to say like that. So that'd be, you know, all those quotes you used to put on your office, all those quotes you use when you're out of this world, that'll be one of those quotes people will remember from Mike Ryan. There you go. You put it on the stone. I just got there a little bit before
I
you.
just got here first.
Yeah.
Except for your joke. You get there first and then you tell him, just make me sweat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, well, we don't talk about that. We don't want people to think the pastor's that mean. That's just between us.
Oh, okay.
What's,
Not now.
don't you start.
My little rose petal.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna move on from there. We're gonna get Sunday school class started. Brother Mike.
Lily, oh yeah, I'm
See,
sorry.
I got the lilies and the flowers.
Lily of the Ridge.
The lily of the ridge.
I heard somebody talking about that.
Okay. So we were all together at the men's retreat, and this is something that he didn't say. I'm going to tell him. And me and Ed were on Randy, as you all witnessed last week. We were on him pretty good because he was making some mistakes with his vocabulary. And he goes, you know, there's a part of me right now that's hoping that I leave this world first. He goes, because I'm going to go up to Jesus and I'm going to tell him, please let him in, but make him sweat. Take him the long way around. He said, take the scenic route. And I looked at him and I said, but I thought the way was straight. That was one of the moments that we almost choked on our food. So that's what that was about. All right, so last week we were talking about Abram, and we were talking about how he had a dilemma and how he chose to deal with it with Lot. The fact that between the two of them, that over their journeys, they had amassed such property that their herdsmen were fighting with each other and arguing about the land and who was going to get to the water and who was going to take care of what, and they just started arguing with each other. The Canaanites and the other tribes in the area were watching this, and Abram understood that, and he understood that this was a problem that he needed to solve. So he met with Lot, and he asked that there be no strife between him and his nephew, and he offered the choice to Lot. You can go to the left or you can go to the right, whichever one you wish. You choose. We spoke last week about how Lot probably could have handled that opportunity a little better, a little more maturely. And we talked about his decision-making process, because we all understand now that he chose the land that was fertile, the plains, and he chose that based on his eyesight. You know, what he saw was pleasing to him, and decided that that's the way that he wanted to go. We talked about how that's sometimes how we make our decisions. We spent some time talking about how sometimes we talk about God blessing us and God giving us things, or things had to have come from God, when it's really what we want. How we talk ourselves into believing that we're being blessed when really we're just taking advantage of our own desires. Just like just like Lot. Lot saw it. He lusted for it. It's what turned him on. And so that's the way that he went. And it probably wasn't the best way for Lot, as we're going to see. So we talked a lot last week about making choices. So this week we pick up with verse number 12, 13, 14, and 15. And Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. If we look at the word wicked, it's rahat, and it means bad or evil. It's disagreeable, malignant, unpleasant. And towards means even to. Sodom is the name of the city, and it means burning. And the first thing that we see in this is that Lot pitched his tent. Now, I believe we've had a couple sermons where the pastor has even talked about this. This is significant because what this signifies is this is the direction in which Lot is focusing his attention. It's not just about, hey, I'm going to put my tent up, I'm going to build my house, and I'm going to face it right towards the northeast, west, or south, or the city. He did it because it was alluring to him. He did it because he liked what he saw. It was attractive. And because we have the privilege of knowing the story, how it all ends, one could say that this was the first step in going in the wrong direction. We talk about how, I know that in the pastor's sermon, when pigs fly, we talked about the man that was possessed on that island with all those demons, and how he didn't just wake up one day, and one day he was normal, and then the next day he was filled with all those demons. We've talked about how through his life he probably went a little too far to the left here, a little too far to the right over there, and then one day he woke up and you're just so far gone and you just don't get it. This would probably be one of those days in Lot's journey where when we know what happens at the end of the story, we can look back and say, yeah, that was probably a wrong choice. No, there ain't no probably about it. This is a day where you made a choice. It was the wrong choice, and it was one of several that led you to the road where you're now fleeing for your life. And so these are the things that I think the Lord puts in His Word for us to read and study and understand, because this is telling us we don't always make the right choice. We're now in a part of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, which we said 1 through 11 was foundational events, 12 through 50 is foundational people. We can't lose. This is actually a foundational event with a foundational person. We're talking about Abram. Abram is the founder of our faith. He's a foundational person. However, this is a foundational event that's taken place, because this is something that we should look at and we should never go stray from when we're sitting there trying to decipher the spirit of discernment. What is God's purpose for us and what isn't? What is His will for us and what isn't? What's our own desire, where you have to pray hard about decisions that we have to make. So we see that he chooses to pitch his tent towards Sodom, which means the burning city. Which is ironic that God destroys it by fire, but it's just, that should be an omen right there. The fact that it's called the burning city and you find it attractive. Sometimes it's just that simple, But from what he was seeing beauty, fun, freedom, and lots of opportunity for more wealth. And that's what he sees. And I think sometimes that's exactly the same thing we see, especially the fun part. We see a lot of fun. And we all know that being a Christian isn't supposed to be boring. It's not supposed to be dull. It's not supposed to be painful. But at the same time, we have to be careful about that word fun. And what are we talking about? And the opportunity, we have to give thanks for opportunity in the spirit of discernment, but not all opportunity should be taken advantage of. I mean, every time we walk across a bridge, we have the opportunity to jump off of it, but do we? And should you? Go ahead.
I was just thinking that we talked about him looking at Sodom and that it looked fun and it looked pleasurable and all that, and then the Bible's description that there is pleasure in sin. And then I thought about, if you remember, the reason that Satan was kicked out of heaven is because he wanted to take over. He wanted to be God, and he wanted to have the same things and mimic the same things. Is it not ironic that he makes sin pleasurable the same as God's blessings are pleasurable? We have to discern between which person is actually doing this to us, because he's made it seem identical and the same in a sinful nature.
And that's where we talk about, Satan in himself doesn't have power, as where God can create something and it can be beautiful and it can be great and we can enjoy it. But it's the whispers and the deception that are the tools of the devil. We're the ones that give him the power, because we look at it and we say, that's fantastic. I love that. That's great. So I'm going to partake in it. But we didn't exercise this, we didn't pray, we didn't exercise a spirit of discernment to decide whether or not that's actually good for us or not. And again, not all opportunities are being given to us by God. So we have to be careful about those opportunities. Lot was lured in, and he followed the lure of it all. And this hurt Abram. And so God spoke to him. And he did that having him look at the land that was before him. Even the land that Abram, or that Lot was taking. And God said, hey, this is all going to be yours anyway. This is going to be your people. I'm giving this all to you. And we've talked about the promises that God has given Abram, and the land part is still not necessarily come to fruition, not because God isn't honoring his part, but because the Israelites are not honoring theirs. They're not being obedient to God. And so, they wander around having to fight for every ounce of land that they live on. But he still took the moment and to talk to Abram, because Abram was hurting. And this, in and of itself, should remind us that even when we are in our lowest, God is still there. God still takes his time to talk to us, to let us know that he's there for us, and that the promises that he's made to us through Jesus Christ, they're still true. And that he's still standing by them, and that we're not alone. So even in our lowest, his word is sufficient. And did we talk last week about that word sufficient? I think we did. I know I put it on the Facebook. When we consider all that God does for us and his blessings in all the different ways, we ask God for a lot of different things. We ask him for healing. We ask him for financial, support, and we ask him for wisdom, and we ask him for strength, and we have hope in him through Jesus Christ. Work issues, problems with family and relatives, we depend on God to get us through a plethora, that means many, different kinds of situations, and they're all different. And the funny thing is it doesn't really happen to us all at once. And so you can spend a lifetime experiencing difficulties and praying, and God pull you out one at a time. But if you were to experience all of them in one day, saying that his grace and his mercy and his word is sufficient would have a new meaning, I think. Because when you say it's sufficient, it's totally and completely sufficient. So his taking Abram and consoling him at this moment was sufficient. And there's a peace in there, and that's what he was providing to Abram, and it's what he provides to us. Because he may not take your problems away from you, but he's going to give you the strength and the wisdom to solve it. You get up, you solve the problem, and then there's a peace. And then you know that he was there with you, which provides even more peace. Because you know that you weren't forsaken and you weren't left out there alone. So Abram was consoled, and he was reminded of the promise that God made to him. Verses 16, 17, and 18. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it, and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Then Abram removed his tent, and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord. Now go ahead, say what you want to say.
You understand, these are all earthly promises.
No.
These promises are given to him, not so much to Abram, but to his inheritance. Because he didn't even have a place to set his foot. He had to buy, I'm getting ahead of you a little bit, but he had to buy a place for him and his wife to be buried. He had to buy it.
I'm going to show it to you too.
But these are all earthly promises. The promise, the nation of Israel still cannot accept the promise that God gave them. That is
Right.
the Messiah. They have not recognized the Messiah yet.
And the seed, the comparison to the dust, is that his seed would be in such a great number that realistically you can't count it. Because it says, so that if a man can number, but the truth of the matter is you can't number the dust. And so what he's saying is, first of all, travel through this space that I'm saying I'm going to give to you and to your seed, and see how vast it is, and understand that it's going to go to your seed, which is just as vast as the dust on the earth.
Yeah.
And so we've already kind of witnessed in the periods from Adam to Noah, and then starting again over with Noah, and here we are with Abram, how, when we say multiply, how much we've multiplied in population. So Abram's seed is going to multiply, and if you consider from Abram until now, a great number. And even to this very day, the Israelites are not on the entire land that he promised Abram. So he compares the seed of Abram to the dust, and then he commands Abram to journey throughout the land to see what he would be bequeathed with, and needs to explore his property. He can't be the father of the faith, and he can't be the patriarch if he doesn't have an understanding of all of what's going on. So God's also telling him to educate himself with what's going on and what I'm about to give you, and to your generations to come. So having done that, Hebron, and let's look at the word Hebron here. We're talking about a place, but this is also where we start having the word Hebrews, okay? People from Hebron. Hebron is located in the southwest of Jerusalem. This would have been on the left in biblical times, and on the right, obviously, it's today. It's a shallow valley, but it's actually 3,000 feet above sea level. But it's a valley in the mountains, and it's 4,300 feet above the Dead Sea, which is to the west of Hebron, as you can see right there. We're going to take a second because it's the most populated industrial city in the West Bank today, and it's also the most tensely fought over land. It's been divided into two parts since 1997. Hebron 1 is 80% of the city is under the control of the Palestine Authority. And Hebron 2 is made up of the settlements, the tomb of the patriarchs, which Brother Cletus was just talking about, and the older pieces of Israel is under Israeli control. And it has been the scene of many important events in biblical history. So this is a view. It's one of the world's most ancient cities, and it was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt, which we can read about in Numbers chapter 13, verse 22, and Genesis chapter 13, verse 18. We'll get to it. It was also known as Kirath Arba, and is spoken about in Genesis 23, verse 2. But this is modern day. Now, what Brother Cletus was talking about, this is the building that holds the tomb of the patriarchs. I recently put a picture on my Facebook page that looks like that, Brother Billy. And what did you say? You said it looks like a nice carpet or something.
That's a nice looking rug.
Nice looking rug, yeah. That's the cover of the tomb of Abraham. That's his tomb, and I don't know if it's a rug or not, but that's what covers his tomb. This is the tombs of Isaac and Rebekah, because they're all in the same complex there. And Abram witnessed, from Hebron, Abram witnessed the destruction of Sodom. And not long after the Israelites entered the promised land from their wilderness journey, it was taken by Joshua in Joshua chapter 10, verses 36 and 37, and given to Caleb in Joshua 14, verses 13 and 14. It became a Levitical city of refuge in Joshua chapter 20, verse 7, and then we read more about that in Joshua chapter 21 and verse 11. It's also a royal residence of King David, and what we're looking at here is an archaeological dig of one of David's palaces. We can read about this period of time in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 5, and it was in Hebron that he was later anointed king over all of Israel. So Hebron is a city that is very widely used throughout the Bible. This is a 1937 photo of the upper pool of David, in where his palace used to be. And then this is ruins that are believed to be a part of King David's palace also, and some of the archaeological artifacts that they have unearthed as well. So it's very interesting when you take the time to read these things. And again, you read what's in the Bible, and then you look and you see people are unearthing things that are dated, and it gives the Bible teeth, I think. Anytime you want to argue with somebody as to whether or not the Bible is true and what we're reading is true, it's not just a made-up book, it's a history book. And the more and more we go, the more and more we find. And then we have to rely on people to destroy the museums that we put it in, like we witnessed before in the pictures that we have shown. You know, there's a lot of people that walk around thinking that, and this is out of ignorance, because I was thinking about this today. You realize we're at a point in time where people don't even come. It's not even that they don't believe in certain things, and maybe they just don't like certain parts of the Bible, so I'll go find a church that is more comfortable. I was thinking about this as I'm driving here this morning, and I'm looking around and seeing people just off busy doing what they're doing. They're not even going to church anymore. They don't even care. There's more and more people, they don't even want to have the argument. There are some that are still, very enthusiastic about disproving the Bible. You have that piece. There are even more people that are just disinterested. I don't even care. I don't want to have the argument. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to read about it. I don't want to know about it. Even though what we're showing you here in the Bible is being proven and dated by archaeological digs.
What they're doing and what they have done is they've pitched their tent towards Sodom for too long. And now that's what they see. Everything else looks pleasurable rather than the right.
One of the hardest things to do is to change a habit. It's incredibly difficult, and the longer you've been in the habit, the harder it is to change. And this, there's a lot of people that they don't even read the Bible anymore. They don't care. They're just busy doing what they're doing, which is why I think this thing coming up at the Creation Museum is pretty interesting to me, because first of all, for those of you that don't know, me and Randy spoke about it. We're going to purchase the CD because we would have to piggyback off of the neighbor's Wi-Fi, and we're not really sure that we would have a solid signal throughout the whole debate. So we wouldn't want to come down here, plan some kind of fellowship, get everybody down here, and then like halfway through it just cuts out on us. And that would be very not good. So we're going to purchase the CD or the DVD, and then when we know we have that, then we'll put together a date and we'll sit here and we'll watch the debate. That's the pastor. That's why he's the pastor. He thinks about those kinds of things, makes the good decisions.
It ain't over yet.
But it's funny because, again, we go to what the world does believe. The world will pick up a book, read a history book about Napoleon, somebody they've never met, never been to his palaces or whatever, but they'll read something that they say he wrote. They'll read somebody else's commentary about him, and they believe it. Napoleon was a real person. And going back even further, George Washington. Okay, there is no photos of George Washington. There are paintings of George Washington, and we have some of his letters, but basically everything we know about George Washington is something that we read. And we choose to believe that. Go ahead.
That's exactly the same thing I use all the time when I start talking to somebody about the Bible. If you sit and think about your life, most of what you believe to be truth is run off of faith. That's right.
Yeah.
Very few. I mean, you learn fire's hot by experience if you put your hand in it. But most of what you learn has been taught to you. It's by faith. It's by some other, even the idea that 2 + 2 is 4. That's not something that you can say, well, if I put 2 things here and 2 things here, it's 4, it's fact. No, somebody taught you a long time ago that 2 things and 2 things make 4. It's by faith that we have and live by, but for some reason we don't want to cross that over into, and like, I love the history, using history book stuff about people. Why you go around and you ask people and you say, do you believe in Napoleon? And probably anybody that's been through a history class says, oh yeah, he definitely existed. Well, then why don't you believe that, I'm not even talking about believing he's the Messiah. There are people who don't even believe he existed. Why?
Yeah. Even though you can go to a lot of the writings of other religions and they will mention Jesus Christ.
Right.
The Jews don't even believe. A lot of the Jews don't believe in that Christ is the Messiah. We know that. That's the reason why they're in the predicament that they're in. They will, later on in history, they will.
Well, and that's why I do look for these things because they exist, they're real, they're being uncovered, and it just makes me wonder if we could, because I know, and it would be foolish not to know that there are people that are enthusiastically against the Bible. But how many people who are just out there in like dead space would change their minds if they were actually enlightened? You know, because there's something about reading a story that happened way before your time that intrigues you and gets you interested and makes you believe that it's the truth. So what is it about the Bible that we could tell other people that would lure them in and get them to understand that this is the truth? Is it showing them these things and saying, listen, if this was a fairy tale, this wouldn't be here.
Remember you asked me.
Yeah,
It's not even forced, it's just coming. Isn't it interesting that if you look at and you ask people in general that the majority of people that you meet come across are moral people. They have rights and wrongs down. They understand these, most people. And the Bible teaches those things. Why are they so set against the Bible? I believe that's because although most people believe in the morals of the Bible, they don't want somebody telling them that that's how you have to be.
That's right, it's an authority.
That's what they don't, they don't want the authority, that's the word, of the Bible over them. They want to pick and choose and do what they want, even though they know certain things they do ain't not right, and believe that.
I was going to say, I run into a lot of people that believe that this is a historical book. It's natural history. It's a historical book with historical things that you're going to dig up and find like any other historical book. But when it comes to the spiritual part of it, they want nothing to do with it. Even though they're morally good people and they believe that they should do right by others and they should they have their feelings, even though all of that, they do not want to believe that it's God that gives them that.
and those are the same people that if you could get them to confess that, that's the issue, that you can sit there and say, so you believe that the children in your home should not obey your authority. That you shouldn't have to obey your parents' authority. That you can go to work and do whatever you want to do and not be subject to your boss's authority.
It's the life we live, especially today, is the belief is there is no ultimate authority.
Yeah. Well, I think what Billy's is right on.
They're saying there is no spiritual authority. There is no spirit, is what they're saying. They don't believe. They believe that it's all natural, and when we die, we're going to die and go in the ground and turn to rats and dirt and whatever. They don't believe in the
That's
spirit.
where I say, a part of the issue is I still think that a part of studying the Bible is to do so in a manner that makes the Bible relevant. I think the problem is when people read the Bible, they read it like a novel. They just read. Nobody stops at certain spots and tries to what does that mean? I mean, when you read that Lot pitched his tent towards Sodom, and you just keep on reading, that could mean absolutely nothing to you because you just keep on reading like it's a novel. But stop and think about what that choice did to the rest of his life. And where is your tent facing? See, that's another thing we don't do. When we read the scriptures and we're seeing these kinds of things, we don't apply it. There's no application. Where is my tent facing? What is it that I find interesting? What is it that's got me hook, line, and sinker? What lies is the devil selling me that I am buying? That's the difficult part. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the choices. People will choose to subject themselves to an authority that they feel comfortable with. But when it comes to a spiritual authority, then, because that's the whole definition of the word faith. There's a lot of people that say, well, I don't believe that because I can't see it, feel it, or touch it, I can't taste it. But you're not talking about faith then. If you can see it, touch it, taste it, hold it, you don't need to have faith in it. Because faith is the belief in something unseen. And then I'll go right back to the whole history book thing. Because you believe that Napoleon existed, right? You believe that Alexander the Great existed. You want to talk to me about philosophy? Well, I guess you believe that Aristotle existed, right? So you'll believe that, but you won't believe the scriptures. So anyway, what did Abram do when he got to where he was going again? He said, verse 16, and I will make thy seed out of the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed be also numbered. Arise, walk through the land. Then, going to verse 18 rather. Then Abram removed his tent and came and dwelt in the land of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord. Every time the father of our faith puts down the stake for his tent, what's the first thing he does? He's got to build an altar.
Sacrifice.
He's got to give a sacrifice. Go ahead.
I think that's another way, I looked at another example, is that he makes sure that in everything he does, everywhere he goes, the Lord is involved in it.
Right.
God is involved in it.
And let's look
It is
at
a place to pray, yes,
Right.
but it's also about keeping God the focus of everything.
and let's look at Luke 6:45. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good. An evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh. Abram, even though we've analyzed some of the things that he has done, and we can see where his faith was wavering a little bit, had an enormous honor and thanksgiving for God. Every time he got to a place where he was going to put down his tent, he built an altar and he was thankful. And he knew exactly who to be thankful to and what to be thankful for. And he honored God. And go ahead.
But in that time, the altar was for sacrifice, the sacrifice to God. He
Right.
always gave. He gave back
Right.
everywhere he went. It wasn't that he just worshipped him, but he also gave what he had to him.
Yeah. And even though that's the sacrifice like you're talking about, we are still supposed to do that. We're supposed to give back. The Bible talks about the tithing and the storehouse. At the same time, we as Christians are supposed to take care of each other, and that's not necessarily just Christians. We're supposed to help our fellow man.
Amen.
We are our brother's keeper. And I'm going to tell you something, a real big reason why today in 2014 there's people pumping gas and going off to do whatever on a Sunday morning is because over time Christians have stopped doing what they're supposed to be doing. There's no business in it. And I'm not talking about business, money business. I'm talking about there's no moving. There's no action. There's nothing that the world is seeing in Christians and saying, I want to be just like that. That's what I want to be a part of right there. They don't say that.
We have made Satan's job
A whole lot easier. They come into a church and there's people backstabbing each other. I don't want to be up in here. We're not even talking out of the Bible in churches anymore. We just have a circle and we sit down and we just have a conversation. But Abram is sitting here and he's having conversations with God and God is talking to him. And here's the thing. He's being obedient. For the most part so far, he's being obedient. And in his obedience, God is blessing him. Don't forget what we've talked about. He was a wealthy man. He had a lot of stuff. He had a lot of servants. He's being blessed. He's still alive because the Pharaoh should have killed him. If that was you or me and we were in there and we did that to the Pharaoh, off with the head. But God has been with him, and he's still alive, and he's still so abundantly blessed. He does his sacrifices to be thankful for his life, his travels, and he just got done doing a peaceful resolution with his nephew that has worked out for him. Because now, which we didn't talk about, but we need to just visit for a second, for the first time since we've even been talking about Abram, he's finally in a position where God wanted him in the first place. Totally alone. Up until this point, Abram has been disobedient by bringing Lot with him. If you recall, God wanted him alone. Leave your kindred. So now, Lot is gone. Abram is by himself. God starts having, the conversations with him again. And he needs to be thankful for that. And tonight, he's got a place to lay his head. God told him to go somewhere. He got there. He's thankful. And then it's out of honor. Because this is what God wants us to do. He doesn't, we've said this before, God doesn't make any bones about it. He says, hey, guess what? I'm a jealous God. And you know what? We've talked about this. Are you a jealous mom or dad? Is it okay with you if your kid calls somebody else mom or dad?
No.
You're going to be all right? And I'm talking about meaning it. You going to be okay with that? God ain't okay with that. You're His creation. He created you. You don't belong to some cow. So He wants us to be thankful. Here's the thing. When your child is doing what you want them to do and is obedient and you don't have any cares, what's the biggest inclination that you as a parent have? To give more. Teenagers, I need the car. And, your history with your teenager and the car is a fantastic one. They're always home, not on time, but early. They always make sure before they hand you the keys back, there's a full tank of gas in that car. They don't ding it up, they wash it and polish it. There's never any trash in. Your child is appreciating the fact that you lend them the car. You may be more inclined to work just a little bit harder for your child because they're earning their own car.
We needed this lesson a few years ago.
Hey, God is always on time. There's no such thing as late. But is that not our inclination? When our kids are doing really well, we want to give more. We want to do more for them. When you do what God wants you to do, God's going to bless you. He says so. He wants to. You're putting your Heavenly Father in the position to want to do more for you because you are doing what you're supposed to be doing for Him. And this is Abram. This is what he's doing everywhere he goes. And this is what Luke 6:45, all of this comes out of Abram's heart. It's in his heart. If he was Cain, he'd give up by now. He wouldn't be giving up the sacrifices that Cain gave. But he's doing it with a pure heart. He's doing it not just out of because you can have two forms of obedience. The hands in the pocket, the head down, kicking the rock kind of obedience. And the obedience where you're joyful, you're happy to do this. I'm happy to do this for you. Sit down and let me do it for you. The difference is Cain and then Abram. He's given the sacrifices out of his heart. And because he is, he's being blessed. And this is the relationship with him and God, and another reason why we're looking at Abram as the father of our faith. We'll talk to him about our problems. This is where we ask for forgiveness. He recognizes and he praises him because he's protecting him up until this point. And now he's seeing his nephew. Abram's going to need God in the future. Again, it's kind of great because we know what the outcome of the story is, but Lot's going to get himself into some trouble. And where's the first place Abram goes? To God. And I'm telling you, the great thing about this is that Abram was a great man. He's the patriarch of Christianity and the other two religions. I'm going to concern ourselves with Christianity. But he's still a man. And if you study, not just read, but if you study, you realize you can have that too. It's not outside of your reach to be just like that. To pray constantly, to have your heart always fixed on the Lord. Him, Paul, These people thought about God all the time. And I say this, you know, I've said this at home too. What percentage of your day is spent in Mike land? And how much of my day is spent with God? I'm going to tell you that it's going to be like this. And yet I still expect God to do something. I still have the expectation that you need to bless me abundantly, even though I give to you frivolously. And it doesn't work that way. Not with God. And we have the examples right here. Abram being the first one that shows that when you do what he does, you will be blessed.
There's a difference between God giving things to you abundantly and God spoiling you.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham showed that he was, when God was giving him stuff, he was getting it.
Yeah.
When we get stuff from God, when God does, do we get it? Do we
You know-
understand why we're getting this? Because if we don't, he's not going to give you more when you're already not properly using what he's giving you now.
Here's the interesting thing. If any of you have read ahead, chapter 14, Abram has an opportunity and he does just that. He's going to save Lot. Lot's going to get himself into some trouble. And Abram is going to round up some troops and he's going to save Lot. And he's going to save Lot's property. And he's going to save a whole bunch of other people too. And a whole bunch of their property. And some kings come to Abraham and says, here, let me give you some spoils. I want to give back to you. He's like, no. No. Give that to them. I have plenty. A part of this whole thing is discipline. God, His grace is sufficient.
Amen.
He knows what you need. And sometimes He blesses you abundantly, but sometimes we have the responsibility to act responsible. And that's another part of what I'm saying. It has always been a Christian characteristic to share. Always. Even Boaz and Ruth. The crops, you go and you pick from the crops and you can eat. The poor would go and pick their own food. And they were to leave some behind. The church was always the place that had the food pantries and took in the sick and the homeless and fed people. The churches very rarely do that anymore. But this is what we're supposed to do. And so that is something, if you're just thinking that God's just going to give you more than you need and more than you've worked for, you're listening to the wrong voice. You have to work for that, because that's another thing. God will tell you, he who doesn't work don't eat.
Right. I was just having a discussion about our government
I'm sure.
last night about entitlement issues, and I made that statement. We're not entitled to anything as well if we don't work for it.
That's right.
That's the fact.
You must work a lot for all the cake you eat.
I just asked for cake. I don't get it very much.
It's 8 minutes till, so, and actually I do believe that that's the last of chapter 13. Is there anything we want to talk about in closing chapter 13 out? All right, moving forward, we will read about Lot getting himself into a quandary. So, we have, 17 minutes now? Be back. Oh, you're giving us the day off?
11 o'clock. Shut me. Good for each other.
Not.
Hey, Billy. Hey, Billy.
My mom has a whole bunch of
They might give you 7 minutes instead of 5.
As I make seven.
We want to draw dinosaurs in
Categorize them like.
Make that Sunday school teacher.
Good one, does he do a good job? How you know, bro? Oh, I believe it.
You're ready for like people from New Jersey. Fist bump, push-ups, capstone.
How long he's been around.
Try to get
We only need one pen, Grandma. Yay.
No, get away.
Wait, you know who this is? This is Catherine, Mike's wife.
I met her this morning, but I didn't know it was
But we
Mike's
only
wife.
need one pen.
My youngin.
We're gonna draw a picture.
Yeah.
We're gonna draw a picture. We're gonna draw a picture.
That's the old name.
Is it okay, Bill?
You gotta,
Is it okay?
oh, if you have to.
You know what's funny about
We all.
Yeah, sure.
Just don't get tacky. Don't get tacky stuff. 21 letter words. Nothing.
He said he told me to put that kind of strength on it, they don't like them. Bluegrass.
Something about 21 little words.
Yeah. He was like, he said the funny thing about me, about him and his word is that, you know, I can't speak either, and none of us can. I said, but don't get her started.
You do a pretty good job.
He keeps him behind his chair, behind it. That's usually where he don't want nobody to run off with it, so he hides it.
Yeah, he makes sure every time it's sitting here, I'll pick it up, and he says, hold on, look back.
Because it has that paper in it that tells him which songs we have using.
Grandma, look what I got.
Like improvisation.
What's that?